out of line here?
Brace yourselves, boys. We're going in.
Am I hallucinating here? Just what in the hell do you think you are doing?
I can't believe you.
I'm not reading. I'm just looking at the picture.
Welcome to the cold, hard truth on sports.
Welcome, everybody, to another week here, the cold, hard truth on sports. I'm your host, Matthew Long. Awesome tournament this weekend, finishing up the Final Four on Saturday and the national championship game on Monday. Nova wins, and a blowout. And I'm not overly surprised by the outcome. But here's the thing is, like, what people don't want to see is blowouts. So for Loyola to win, for them to lose the way they did against Michigan, and then for Michigan to lose the way they did against Nova, that depresses what we want to see out of the sport and out of the players. So that's not it's not at all what they were looking for. It's not at all what they're looking for, and people wanted to see something more. You don't always get what you want, but they wanted to see something more. It's they want to see something more there. It's still, in my opinion, it was a good game. I enjoyed what I watched of it. I enjoyed that we had some pretty historic programs. That being said, as far as it comes down to the historic program part of it, the last couple days, driving my kids to school, all I have been hearing is a reoccurring rant that that Michigan and their sports program is the most overrated program in all of college football. They're all of college sports, sorry. Because, let's face it, the two biggest money-making sports in college sports are football and men's basketball. And, yes, over the course of time, no one has won more games total than Michigan. But in 70-some years history of sports, they have 1.5 national titles. And again, I'm saying half because that's what has been being said. That is the rant that I hear in the last 2 mornings from Clay Travis, that 1.5. Now, they claim the national title in 1997. The top-ranked team played and won a national title. And the Sears Trophy is sitting in Lincoln. I mean, that's the one that counts, truly. But they got a share of one of the number of... Again, that's the funny thing. We usually had multiple national titles. You could be the coach's national champion. You could be the AP national champion. You know? And then you could win your bowl game. Now is one. Really, since the BCS, there's only been one national championship. I think it was to kind of eliminate some shares on titles, you know? And then Now with a tournament structure, that's pretty much been eliminated by Power 5 schools. Because, and again, that's why I go back to saying I don't mind UCF laying a claim to a national title. They clearly were on the outside looking in. And they were not considered and segregated from their peers. They were disenfranchised. And because they said, hey, listen, we beat the team that beat both the teams that played for the national title. We went undefeated. And we beat, was it 5 top 25 ranked teams? Several Power 5 teams. So, you can't. I can see where they're laying their claim, and I don't mind their claim. But they're not laying a claim to a share of Alabama's national title. They're just saying that they are the undefeated national champion. That's what they're saying. Which, what is it saying? If you're not going to include us in your club fully, screw you. We're gonna have our own award. We're gonna honor ourselves. If you're on board, you're on board. If not, who cares? Let's meet on the football field. So I'm fine with that. But yeah, all right. I'll get into that. In some messages here. But one and a half national titles, 2, whichever claimed. So 2 national titles in 70-some years is not a good track record. Well, man, what about Nebraska? Nebraska's last national championship was in 97. Well, before 97, they won them in 94 and 95. And the coach left in 97. And it kind of fell apart from there. The fan base's expectation, administration's tolerance. So, yeah. But even if we start from 1960 moving forward, there still hasn't been a school that's won more games in football than Nebraska since 1960. 5 national championships. There's no school in all of sports that has more academic All-Americans on top of that. Clearly not fighting staying eligible. The struggle lately has been division, conference, and national titles. Winning football games is there, but that's not what people became accustomed to. So I get that. No, they haven't, but they've won 5 in the same amount of time, in less than the amount of time that Michigan, that was being ranted about. Nebraska's won 5 national championships, all in football, none in basketball. They have no basketball national championships. They have 5, though. 5 national championships between 2 sports. Michigan has 2 at best. 1 and a share, which that's fine. And I agree, Michigan as a program is tremendously hyped. They are tremendously hyped. They have culture. They have money. A lot of good players in the 2 sports have been profound parts of professional sports. So, no, I don't have an issue with the hype of it. He listed Georgia football. Georgia, their program has up there. Number 2. Isn't Georgia just Michigan of the SEC? I mean, truly. You think about it. I don't know how Miami didn't make it in the mix. You know, if we're talking about as of late, they won early 2000s against Nebraska, who was on the downswing but still made it to a national championship. So, I mean, we can talk about our programs overhyped, overrated. Sure, what of it? But these are Power 5 pedigree programs. They're high dollar programs. They have a lot of alumni. They're, for the most part, in markets that draw attention. Georgia, it's not too far from Atlanta. It falls into the Atlanta market. It's the largest market in that part of the South, without getting into Florida. Because Alabama, I guess, I think Montgomery is a part of the Atlanta market too. Essentially the same market for football. It would break down into regional coverage from there. So, but I don't have a problem with it. Michigan has made it to a couple national championships. What's more worrisome, I guess, is the 7th straight national championship game for basketball that the Big Ten has lost. But I don't think anybody really at the beginning of the year was saying, Michigan is a strong favorite to win the national championship. They got hot in the tournament and, had a week off, played against, rested up against Loyola Chicago, and then came against probably one of the best all-around teams in college basketball. And now they've won 2 national titles in the last 3 years. So I can't begrudge their loss. I can't say put it down more than it is. But I thought this was kind of a down year for the Big Ten, season-wise. They obviously had a fair amount of teams in the tournament, and Michigan made it to the national championship game. So, clearly, it's a conference that is able to hang out at the top of college sports. But I want to get a little bit more deeper into these last 3 games of the college basketball season. And to do that, I want to welcome in my co-host, author of the P.K. Frazier novel series, Kevin Krest. How are you doing tonight, Kevin?
I'm doing well, Matthew. How are you?
Well, I'm doing good. I'm staying busy. Very busy.
Well, it was certainly an exciting weekend of college basketball, and it wasn't all on the men's side. For anybody that was paying attention to the women's Final Four, it was ridiculous. The men's basically paled in comparison, unfortunately, in terms of excitement and drama. But it certainly was a nice weekend in San Antonio for the men. But unfortunately, it didn't live up to much hype, at least not after about the 12-minute mark of the second half of the first game between Loyola and Michigan. So a little bit disappointing for me, I thought that we'd have seen a better game between Villanova and Kansas for sure, but Villanova was just unstoppable for the weekend. They seemed to take all the drama out early in both games and weren't really challenged. Not the way I thought they would be. But that being said, people forget how highly touted Villanova was early in the season until Virginia overtook them in the polls. So they kind of came in under the radar, a little bit under Virginia. Not that Villanova didn't get the top seed. And so I think Virginia's loss to UMBC overshadowed a lot of what, Villanova had accomplished in obviously winning all 6 games in the tournament by double digits. That's quite an accomplishment.
So in large part, what was it that, again, I watched Kansas this year and they looked down. I think Kansas and Michigan, like if somebody said that Kansas and Michigan were the two teams in the Final Four, I'd be like, that's a long shot. Just watching them during the season, Kansas several times this year either played too close to games or lost to teams that they shouldn't have, including a team in Lincoln where Nebraska just couldn't hit shots. They couldn't close out, but they almost lost in Lincoln. And it was kind of more that kind of same. It just showed that it didn't look like they belonged there. They looked flat. I was watching the end of it. We were at Applebee's, picked my father-in-law up from the airport on Saturday. So we're more in our house now, and I was watching it there, and man, it was kind of they were kind of getting boat race there at the end. It's it's always tough to look up and see that a team's about to lose by 20 points. Looked like it was about to go to the 20-point mark. And I was just like, man, this is not entertaining. And Loyola had lost earlier in the evening, by what? Double digits as well. And to Michigan. And then I was like, man, that's just too bad. What was worse? I saw some footage of the Loyola kids getting off the bus in Chicago, and just like seeing them get off with their duffel bags going back. It was like, it was sad. I was like, this like wrecks the whole tournament. Just like, why are you showing me them depressingly get off the bus with the bags after losing by 12 to Michigan? I didn't want to see that. That's not good news. That's not. Why are we broadcasting this crap? But, somebody had a camera.
We've talked before. And we're part of it. We're content. There's content to fill, and so they want to show that. But I think the tournament actually came out. It was kind of a dud to me. There wasn't. It lacked a lot of the drama, and I think part of it was because the one half of the bracket was just obliterated. With Xavier and UVA going out, and you end up with, the South region with the 5, 7, 9, and 11 seeds, playing in that region, and so you just kind of had. Kentucky went out in the 5 seeds, so you had to end up with the 9 and 11 seeds playing in the Elite Eight. And I understand that the upsets are cool and people, the underdog thing is nice, that I don't expect to see Kansas State and Loyola in an Elite Eight game. I mean, I just don't expect to see that. And it wasn't that interesting to me. I mean, Loyola was interesting to an extent. They had, I was in Dallas, as I've mentioned, for the first two games and saw those incredible wins by Loyola. But at the end of the day, I don't think a Final Four of Michigan, Loyola, Villanova, and Kansas is all that exciting. I mean, and I agree with you. Kansas underperformed most of you. I mean, they did win the Big 12, but they lost twice to Oklahoma State. And they were drubbed 3 or 4 times this season. So, was it a surprise that they got killed by Villanova? No, because Villanova's really good. I mean, they're just a very good basketball team. But, the whole weekend on the men's side was just anticlimactic, I guess, is I would call it. It lacked a lot of excitement. I mean, yeah, Loyola had that 10-point lead early in the second half against Michigan, but you kind of had a feeling they were hanging on. They were just hanging on, and they did. And Michigan came back and used their athleticism and their size to take out Loyola. I mean, you could actually have seen a different scenario, I think. Just think if they'd reseeded it like they should, and Villanova had played Loyola and Kansas had played Michigan, you probably would have had the same result. Villanova, Michigan in the Final Four. I mean, in the championship game. So, I guess we got the product that was delivered, but it wasn't one of those great years for me anyway. Not in terms of really. And I watched every game. I watched them all to the extent that I could. There were some games opposite each other in the Sweet 16. It's hard to watch them all, but I did DVR them and watched them back to back to back, just like I watched the football games. And so I tried to watch everything, but boy, that Final Four was a dud. I mean, with the exception of the excellence that Villanova exhibited last night. I mean, they were just excellent. Jay Wright drew up a great game plan, and his team executed it well. Michigan, I mean, they knew Villanova was going to shoot threes. In the first half, they were able to keep Villanova from filling it up from three, but the second half, DiVincenzo and those guys just lit it up. When you've got 6'8" guys shooting threes, it's hard to defend. But I lost interest. I watched the whole game, but I'm looking forward to the Masters. It's like most years, it's like, oh wow,
yeah, it's
got the Final Four, and then we're the Masters. This year, we got the Masters. Let's get this Final Four
I know.
away. And it just wasn't. Even though you had 2 number 1 seeds, I mean, it wasn't like we had bad teams, but
oh yeah,
2 1s and a 3. I mean, you got to figure there's pretty excellent teams, and Loyola was underseeded. I mean, that's probably a 7 or 8 seed team at worst. I mean, they were 29-5 in a pretty good conference. They probably should have been seeded better than that, but still, it should have been better than it was, and it just wasn't. Saturday night was just. I was out of town. I watched the first half of the game the first half of the first game in Colton Steakhouse in Harrison, Arkansas. Watched the rest of it in the hotel room, and it just wasn't riveting. I watched it because I'm a sports person. We report on it, and we're sports media people.
Yeah.
But man, that's painful. I was.
Yeah.
I was not interested in it, and that's unfortunate. In the NCAA, I mean, I think they did a pretty good job, but I talked last week and 2 weeks before. I think the seeding was off. I think the teams that got in were fine. I don't be arguing with any of the teams, but I think they've got to start seeding these mid majors higher. I think you've got to give them a better shot. When you don't give Power 5 schools anything lower than an 11 seed, that's just wrong. I just think they should be seeded differently. And I'll lose that argument every time with the NCAA with all their quadrant system and all that kind of crap they do. But
I lose that when I argue.
Loyola was 11, and
I argue people should give some credit. Like I said, I don't know if you heard at the beginning, at the top of the show. I mean, the same way that you want to give credit to, I give credit to UCF for their claim on a national title this year. If you're saying only Power Fives can be in the Final Four, then what's wrong with their national title claim? They went undefeated. They beat everybody on their schedule, and they beat a team that beat the two teams they're playing in a national championship. I don't have an issue with that. You know?
I have no issue with what UCF did to promote themselves. None at all. And as we talked last week, I mean, if you go to 6 teams or 8 teams, UCF's in. Maybe not 6. You go to 8 teams, UCF's in, and you know what? They probably would have come in as an 8 seed. They probably would have played. Who was the number 1 seed this year? Clemson. You know, they'd have given Clemson a game. I mean, they absolutely would have, and maybe they would have beaten them. But you know, I have no problem with UCF's claim. I mean, but the system is what the system is. I mean, it's the Power 5 schools. They're the ones with the money, the big stadiums. They're funding all this thing. So, the system has to change for UCF to get a shot, or UCF in the future. And as we talked last week, UCF, they didn't get to play Georgia Tech. I think you and I were talking about that offline.
Yeah.
I don't think we had it on the air last week. But if UCF had played Georgia Tech, because that game was canceled because of the hurricane, if you've given them a 12-0 record,
I honestly, it was supposed to be in Atlanta.
That would have been
like literally the hurricane.
Really
I didn't get that at the time too, and I was like, why are they canceling a game? I mean, it's this because the storm didn't even hit till like Monday. You know, the storm didn't hit till Monday in South Florida. It didn't hit us up here in Central Florida, like Orlando area, till Tuesday, and it didn't even get towards Atlanta and stuff till late Wednesday night. Like, I didn't get why it was canceled. And it was a Power 5 school, so wouldn't you try to work around on that? I don't know. It just was kind of a weird sort of deal. I mean, I really did. I railroaded Miami for their canceling Arkansas State because, and then, who was it? Florida State rescheduled Directional Mud Puddle State to play them.
They actually played that game late in the season.
Because they wanted to become bowl eligible. And then the NCAA said they are technically not bowl eligible, but then the bowl committee for whichever bowl game it was in, they're like, yeah, we're still accepting them. They're still invited. So it's like, whatever. Because they didn't want to lose the record of consecutive bowl games. I mean, like, here. So Derek's our business and law contributor, Derek Hamlin. He's gonna join us tonight on this on college sports because there's gonna be there's a couple lawsuits, some litigation going on that puts the NCAA into sticky waters as far as it comes to how they can compensate, how they can limit compensation of players. So that'll be around in a half hour or so. But I agree. I agree.
Mark Emmert from the NCAA is still banging the gavel about, well, that's not a good idea. But from a free market perspective and from just a fairness, I don't know how you can tell kids, well, the NFL can't take you, and we're not going to pay you. I have a problem. I have a fundamental problem with the fact that, and they can't even get jobs. I mean, it's terrible, the restrictions that they have on especially football and basketball players.
Well,
if I have a music scholarship, right, I can play at the bar down the street and make money, right?
Yeah.
I can. There's no restrictions. There's no There's no NC. There's no National Collegiate Music Association that's keeping me
Not yet.
From benefiting from my talent, right? Not yet. From my talent, and yet college athletics is like this little island out there where we treat where it's not capitalist. There's no capitalist endeavor here. It's this monarchy by the NCAA that says, oh, well, because you signed a letter of intent because you're playing college football, you can't do anything, and you can't get anything, which is totally ridiculous.
It's not. So, that's not really what they're saying, but okay, because student athletes can get paid while they're student athletes. They can get paid. They're just not allowed to use their likeness. I'm trying to pull up the guy's name. There's actually because Donald De La Haye, the kicker for that was at UCF, ironically, the UCF kicker, he could have continued to play football and make money on his YouTube channel. It's just how he was making money on his YouTube channel. He was using his likeness as a football player to make money. Like, for example, Texas A&M, they have a runner. And he has a company that he owns that he sells water bottles for runners, right? He also does YouTube channel for his water bottle, makes money off that too. He's a scholar athlete for Texas A&M. He's a runner. He's allowed to because the same way Donald De La Haye did when, and again, the NCAA makes waivers and exceptions for student athletes to make YouTube channels so they can make money off YouTube. Now, the NCAA approved both athletes. They approved both athletes in this scenario. But the difference is he did not say, I'm a Texas A&M runner, or you should buy this because I'm a Texas A&M runner.
I get you.
You see what I'm saying? So
listen to what you just said. But what you just said is my point. The NCAA made a waiver. In other words, the NCAA still says grace. They still say yay or nay. My feeling is the NCAA should get out of the way and let these kids do whatever they want to do.
Oh, I agree.
I don't care if it's their likeness, and if they are a football player.
I don't
That's
think
what they are. So why don't they
see,
play
that
on
thing
it?
is like
ridiculous.
This is where a lot of people get into the argument with me, and I feel like they lose hands down. I don't think the NCAA should pay players. It's not their place. They shouldn't be paid. Maybe even, and I don't even have an issue with saying that the schools are limited on how they can contribute out of fairness and competition. But my big issue is when you tell the student athlete, an individual in a capitalist society, that you are limited on what you can make. You're capped. And that's the biggest bucket of horse pucky ever. I'm telling you, like if a company feels that someone has a value, a certain value, and they want to pay them set amount of dollars or give them an endorsement or free shoes or a bus ride or a ride home from the restaurant in the rain from a booster, then that should be perfectly fine, because that is the prerogative there. If an athlete is so good that a booster of the school also owns Nike and he wants to drop some coin on some players, once they're players, then that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have an issue with student athletes making money off their likeness. I don't think that they should make money. I don't think you should be making money from the NCAA or a governing body, and they shouldn't be making money necessarily probably from the school if you're getting scholarship and stuff like that. That is a form of payment. So, but if endorsements and stuff, I mean, we have swimmers, like I was talking about. I have a thing. I'm going to talk a little bit later in the show. There's some brief updates on boxing. And Doug Gottlieb today on his show got into it, kind of a perfect explanation of boxing today. And it kind of falls into the same realm as you are with boxing, Kevin. But there's a boxer. He's an amateur boxer in Puerto Rico. I covered him while I was covering the World Series of Boxing while I was down there, and I follow him. He's competed and medaled in Pan Am Games. He competed in the last Summer Olympics. Again, that's the last time they had. Probably the last time they'll have boxing too, because they're eliminating boxing now from the Olympics. So there's not really many original Olympic sports left. So boxing and wrestling are gone. It's from original Olympics. So it's he has an endorsement from the Spanish version, Latin American version of Tide, right? So he's endorsed it by them, which I don't have any issue with, and it's perfectly fine. It doesn't inhibit him from being an amateur boxer. It doesn't improve him being an amateur boxer. All it's done is create an opportunity where a company felt like they could capitalize on his likeness, and he felt like he could sell his likeness, and they've agreed for him to be running in a commercial on a beach in Puerto Rico, saying a couple lines, and they give him money and probably some free detergent. So I don't have an issue with that. I don't get how people can say that endorsements, players being endorsed and give money, that takes away from amateurism. No, that doesn't. Now, if the school or the NCAA are paying them multi-million-dollar checks, yes, that is. That takes away from amateurism. That does take away from it. But endorsements don't. I've been to and played in many basketball tournaments growing up, and they're all endorsed by somebody. Maybe Nike, Under Armour, Bison, We did a Bison tournament every year. Hell, Bison actually was the main sponsor for one of the gyms that we did, the Nebraska games, the basketball portion of the Nebraska games in Lincoln. It was a Bison gym. They sponsored the whole thing. So their logo's on the backboard, which they're a basketball hoop company. They're on the court everywhere. You go. You see Bison. It didn't affect how I played in the tournament. It didn't affect that they paid for the trophies. Some of the medals that we got. The water bottles that we got for free. It didn't take away from us being amateurs at all. So people, I don't know. People are getting better in this day and age of speaking before thinking, and what makes it worse is that they don't. After they've received more information, they're unwilling to recant what they say. Just stuck in that tribal mentality. But I don't know. But hey, let's talk about the Masters here. Actually, I want to talk about the Houston Open. My goodness, man, Hostler. Bo Hostler, man. I feel bad for that guy. He led the entire tournament up until the last 7 holes.
Well, actually, Ian Poulter led most of it. Poulter entered the final round tied with Hostler, and at one point, Poulter had a three-shot lead with 7 holes left. And it looked like Poulter was just going to run away with it. There were a bunch of guys after him. It was obviously Hostler was after him. Jordan Spieth was back there. Henrik Stenson was making a run. There were a lot of good players. And Poulter, didn't play badly, just didn't make any putts the last 5 or 6 holes. And Hostler birdied 4 in a row. Hostler birdied 12, 13, 14, 15 to take a one-shot lead. And so, they come to the last hole. Hostler and Poulter were about 2 feet apart on the 18th green. Hostler putted first, missed by probably a quarter of an inch, maybe. Just slid by the hole. When you give the pros a read on a putt, like Poulter got a read on that putt, and he just rammed it in the back of the hole, and they went to the playoffs, and Hostler, unfortunately, hit a second shot in the bunker and hit the next shot over the green into the water, and he was out of it. So Poulter ended up winning and qualifying for the Masters. And so it was a great tournament. Jordan Spieth played very well, shot a 66 on the last day. He just kind of ran out of holes, couldn't quite catch the other 2 guys, finished third. It was the Houston Open's great because it's the last chance. The field for the Masters was basically set last Tuesday when the World Golf Rankings came out. And so the top 50 in the world at that ranking, if they weren't otherwise qualified for the Masters, so most of them were. There were only 4 guys snuck in on that last ranking. But Poulter was 51st. And so he was one place out of qualifying for the Masters. He had to win at Houston. That's a lot of guys that weren't already in the Masters. And so he pulled it off. Good for him. That was a great win that he changed putters. He put a putter back in his bag. I think during the match play that he played using the Ryder Cup in 2012. So he took a putter out of his closet and said, "Oh, I'm going to play with this putter." He played well at the match play. Got into, I believe, Poulter got into the quarterfinals of the match play, and then won last week. So it's a good tournament, but that's what makes that tournament exciting. Because for the last 11 years, the winner of that tournament's gotten to go to the Masters. It's the last tournament prior to the Masters. So it's interesting development there. And
it must have been just when I was looking at it then, because I know over on the CHT on golf page, I put out, I guess it was Friday's, the end of Friday's board. Hostler was in the lead then, but that was Friday. It was pretty early on. But I don't know. I just felt like every time I looked down, he was up or tied or right there. It was right there for him to win, and it just kind of slipped away there towards the end. So kind of a crummy deal.
He'll be a big winner on tour. He's a good player. He was also at the University of Texas shortly after Jordan Spieth was there, and so he's gonna get his. Interesting enough, and this is on my you ran my piece on Cold Hard Truth on Sports on the recap of the tournament Sunday night. Poulter was 123rd after Thursday's round. So there have been almost 1,500 golf tournaments on the PGA Tour in the last, I think it's 30-some years. And only 12 winners have been outside the top 100 after the first round, and none were as low as Poulter. So that was a historic comeback for him. He came back and shot 64-65 to take the lead, which is ridiculous. I mean, what he did over the weekend. Then, of course,
that's stroking it.
Won the playoff over Haas. So, yeah, it was crazy.
But
it was crazy.
It's like he'll never hit that. Is Augusta's was it the only course that nobody's ever hit a 65 on? They've never hit a 60. I think 66 was like the best score.
62. The course record, the tournament record is 63 at Augusta.
Yeah.
And so, and until last year, no one had broken 63 at a major. I can't remember who it was that shot 62 last year. It might have been Justin Thomas at the PGA. But 63 was like this magic number at the majors. And somebody broke it last year. I can't remember who it was. I should know that. I should have been prepared for that. But anyway. And
I'm throwing curveballs, Kevin. Yeah. Threw that one right in the dirt.
I tell you something. Somebody could go. Yeah, I did. Just dump that. That was a swing and a miss. But I will find that out. But the interesting thing this week, the hype is just ridiculous for the Masters this week, right? I mean, it is absolutely.
It's Phil Mickelson.
It's interesting. Phil and Tiger played a practice round today for the first time together.
I'm hearing about the bromance lately.
For the first time in 22 years, I think it is. 19 years, something like that. It's been a long time since they played together, and they actually teamed up today to play against Fred Couples and Thomas Peters in the practice round. And guess what? They dusted them. They Nicholson and Woods, Tiger. They only played 9 holes. Okay, apparently Tiger eagled 13 and 15. And
his glutes were activated.
14 and 16, and they just dusted those two guys. And so we'll see. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. So it was Brandon Grace at the British Open last year that finally broke the 63 record in the major. So it hasn't been. There's nobody's broken the U.S. Open. Nobody's shot it at the PGA. Nobody's shot it at the Masters. So,
Mickelson had the 63.
We'll see, but it's
yeah, I see here Brandon Grace. Yeah, because it said Mickelson had a 63 at the Open Championship.
It started with Johnny Miller's 63 in the 1973 U.S. Open at Oakmont. He shot the 63 in the final round to win, which was a huge deal at the time. And so it was sort of a magic number until last year. So this year, as we look into this Masters, one of the reasons it's getting so much publicity is because a lot of guys are playing well. Nicholson at age 47 has a win. Bubba Watson has 2 wins. Justin Thomas has 2 wins. Dustin Johnson has a win. Tiger's back and playing really well. I mean, for having only played 5 tournaments, he has 2 top 5 finishes, which is very unexpected in terms of how well he's playing.
And he didn't sneak in the top 5, like second and 5th. But the 5th was at a course he hadn't played since he was 20?
No, the second place finish was the course.
Oh, in Tampa?
Was Innsbruck. In
he did finish. That second was in Innsbruck. Bay Hill was 5th, right?
Yeah, Bay Hill was his fifth, where he's won 8 times. But you've got all these guys playing really well, and you have Rory McIlroy, who won at Bay Hill, and he's looking for his career Grand Slam at Augusta.
Yeah,
it's going to be really something at the top of the field. And I just submitted a piece tonight that will probably show up on sports-central.org tomorrow about how the field at Augusta isn't really that stellar. It's not that big a field. It probably only goes 40, 50 deep. But
the cut's going to be 50. I heard the cut's going to be 50, and they have 80 playing the first round. It's 80?
Yeah, there's 87 actually 87 players.
Yeah.
They could have had 88. It would have been 88, but Brooks Koepka is out with injury. So they have all the top 50 in the world, which is I think they're 49 of the top 50 in the world playing. And but what they don't have, they don't have a lot of depth. And so, and by the way, the top 50 in the world, the official world golf rankings are kind of skewed. It takes into consideration performance over the last 2 years, okay? And it also gives as much credit for a win on the Japan Tour as it does on the PGA Tour, which we all know is ridiculous, right? Because to win in Japan is a lot easier than to win in the U.S. It also gives a European Tour win the same weight as a win on the PGA Tour.
But the thing is, the European Tour is actually is really competitive. It's a really competitive tour.
It's competitive.
But not necessarily the players, the courses. The courses are a lot more competitive. Not necessarily because of the
But it's not
golfers.
the PGA Tour.
Yeah, it's not the PGA
guys
Tour.
All the time come over here from the European Tour and have trouble winning. So the official
it's
World
like
Golf
the
rankings
NBA. It's like the NBA. I mean, like there's Turkish teams and teams in Israel that could probably beat NBA teams, but you're never. There's never going to be a consistent thing. We know because we watch the Olympics, and the U.S. pretty much just always wins gold.
Right.
So
right. I mean,
yeah.
I mean that those leagues aren't the same as the NBA, and there never will be. And so the official world golf rankings are really skewed internationally, and the whole intent was to grow the game internationally. Okay, so when a tournament like the Masters bases its field on official world golf rankings as opposed to the FedEx Cup rankings, right? You get a lot of international players that really can't compete on a regular basis on the PGA Tour, and so the field is diminished because of that. You don't have a lot of people that can win it. You just don't. And so when you look at like the Players Championship, for instance, that's coming up in May, that's actually the strongest field in any golf tournament in the world. It's the deepest, strongest field. They have 156 players, and it's generally the top 156 in the world. I mean, you've got an incredible field. The Masters, you have number one, you have all the former champions under the age of 65.
You there, Kevin? All right. All right, a little bit of technical difficulties here. If you're still listening over on live on the Spreaker app, we are getting this reconnected. So is our end to fill off? Okay. It's all right. Let's fix it. Let's get it fixed. Okay.
Welcome to Blog Talk Radio. Please enter your host PIN. When finished, press the pound key.
To start your show now, press 1. To hear important instructions.
Since it appears you're calling back into a live show, we are reconnecting you now.
In golf for a long time, and this is as excited as I've seen, because all the players that you want to see are all playing well. Every one of them. You could name. If you'd gone back to January 1st and said, okay, who do you want to see at the Masters coming in playing well? And you'd have said Tiger, Phil, Rory, Jordan, Justin Thomas, Dustin Johnson. You can throw John Rahm in there, Rory McIlroy. And every one of them is either playing really well, Ricky Fowler, Justin Rose. They're all either playing really well and have won, or they're just playing well. Tiger hasn't won, but he's playing well. Justin Rose won in December, but he's had like six out of his last 8 events have been top 10. So, he's playing tremendous golf. Ricky Fowler hasn't won, but he's playing great golf. And so we'll just have to see what transpires. It should be very exciting. I mean, I'll watch every minute that I can on TV. I probably would have tried for a media credential at the Masters, but I got to tell you, Matthew, it's hard to get in and out of the place. It's hard to find a place to stay. It is not an easy place to try to see a tournament. I've been there a couple times, and it's difficult. And so I'm focusing more on the PGA Tour. I did get my credentials today for the U.S. Women's Open in Birmingham at the end of May, beginning of June. So that I will be covering that from on site. That'll be exciting. So and hoping to get some PGA Tour credentials here for several tournaments in the next couple months.
Well, that's awesome, man. We got to figure out the Masters thing sometime. Finding a way to get in there. You didn't. I'm guessing you haven't brought your vacation home there yet. So. Yeah, let's see. That was out.
I'm expecting. I'm expecting this year to cover at least probably 8 to 10 PGA or USGA events with credentials, which should actually get me credentialed for the Masters for next year. I think there shouldn't be any question about that. If we keep doing the coverage that we're doing it, I'm on several sites, and including yours, so should be able to get something together, which would really be interesting to do some video from down there and get some on site coverage. But this year just didn't.
I may have something.
Center.
I may have something. I'll be able to get set up for you in Jacksonville for the Players Championship. I'll be discussing it this week.
Yeah, I have requested. Yeah, I requested credentials to that, and so we'll see what happens for us, actually, for Cold Hard Truth on Sports. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this weekend, the Masters. In fact, I'm writing a piece right now, Matthew, to send to you for us to get on site. I'll give a little teaser. It's about the forgotten Masters, there's some famous Masters tournaments. Obviously, 1986 with Jack Nicklaus, 1997 with Tiger Woods, Tiger's 2001 when he completed the Tiger Slam, Phil Mickelson's 2005 when he won his first Masters, those kinds of things. But there's some others that have gone a little bit more unheralded that were still as equally significant. So that'd be kind of my piece. I'll be sending you later tonight or tomorrow for you to get up on the website, people to look at and to read about.
What about the 96 Greg Norman Masters?
Yeah, that's one of those famous ones, right? That's the Nick Faldo coming back from 6 shots behind to beat Greg Norman.
Yeah.
You can call it Norman collapse, or you can call it Faldo made a charge. I think it's a combination of both of those things.
I've never been so sad in a golf match. You know that? I've always Tiger Woods and Greg Norman. I've never been a bigger, probably because they're two of the more notable golfers in my lifetime. You know, the other's kind of more of a little too young to really have appreciated, you know, what happened in the 70s and early 80s. But Greg Norman was like, I don't know, he's just one of those guys that just, you wanted him to win, but he just never did. It's almost like Rory McIlroy. You know, people seem to like the guy, but he still doesn't have that. You know, he doesn't have the big one yet. So it's that was kind of, you know, it was kind of a sad thing to watch in '96, and just like it's like, oh God, he's gonna win. Oh man, it was just like the most epic fall apart, like somebody sabotaged it. It felt like it was like, oh, somebody said, how can you just not, I don't know how that's not a 30 for 30 special. By the way,
well, Norman,
great clothing.
Norman had the Saturday.
His clothes, I love them. Yeah. By the way,
Norman had the Saturday Slam. Norman had the Saturday Slam. 87. He led every major going into Sunday, and only won one, the British Open, which he won twice. His only major. He won the British Open twice, but he led every major that year. He lost. Oh my gosh, it might have been 88. Larry Mize chipped in from 50 yards to beat him in the Masters. Bob Tway chipped in from the bunker to beat him in the PGA. He had the collapse in '96 against Nick Faldo. He lost in the U.S. Open playoff to Fuzzy Zell. I mean, he probably could have won 6, 7, 8 majors, right?
Yeah.
And he won 2. That's all he's got. Now,
yeah.
He's also supremely rich and extremely successful in other things, but it was just amazing how he just had the most horrible luck that these guys just came out of nowhere to beat him in such ridiculous ways. I mean, chip ins and all these kinds of crazy things. But the '96 Masters, he just let that one get away from him. When you lead by 6 shots, you got to close the deal. He didn't do it.
Yeah.
But he was ranked. People forget how good he was. He was the first number 1 in the world when they came out with the World Golf Rankings. He was like the first guy, and he held it for a long time. Back in the late '80s, early '90s, he was the man.
Yeah.
And actually he got and he kind of here's another tidbit about him. He proposed what today is the World Golf Championships. The 4 that they have every year, the World Golf Championships. He proposed that format to the commissioner of the PGA, Tim Finchem, back in the mid '90s, and they told him that it's not a good idea. And then they implemented it starting in 1999. So not only did he get did he lose golf tournaments in ridiculous ways. He had his idea stolen for a world golf format by the PGA and R&A, and excuse me, the PGA Tours and European Tour.
You know, you might have a case against the NCAA if they move to a 6-team tournament. Just saying.
Yeah, I wish I could. I wish I could take credit for that. But you know, the funny thing about that, Matthew, is that my first book was released in August of 2013, and in that book, if you remember, you read them.
Yeah, it's on the shelf. I can see it from where I'm sitting.
And it took place. And it took place in 1998 was the first time for that because I wrote it was in the past. And 3 weeks after my book was released, 3 or 4 weeks, I was driving from Arkansas to Virginia, and that was the day that they announced the college football playoff system. But it was a 4-team system, and they announced the committee and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, that was kind of interesting. I was like, hey, wait a second.
You got Greg Norman.
Original idea, but... You know.
That should be a phrase. Yeah, Greg, you got Greg Normand.
Oh, I've been Greg Norman on the golf course a lot. Okay, that's nothing new for me to lose in dramatic fashion. But Norman's a unique figure in you know, as great as he was, and only to close the deal on 2 major championships is rather remarkable because he was every bit as good as guys like Phil Mickelson and Rory McIlroy, and he wasn't as good as Tiger Woods. Nobody was or probably will be. In fact, we'll see this week how good Tiger Woods still is, whether he can get in the fray. But Norman was long, he was straight, he could putt, he was remarkable. He just couldn't finish the deal in the majors. It just was one of those really weird quirks of fate for him. And in fact, even at the age of, I want to say it was age of 56, 54, something like that, he challenged at the British Open again. He was in the mix at the British Open one year and came close, but couldn't get his third one there. So he just, I've always enjoyed, you know, those little trivia things about Greg Norman, about how he lost these tournaments. It's just unbelievable. But to hold the Saturday lead at every major, which nobody else has done that, by the way, and to only win one is, you know, it's almost remarkable that he wasn't able to win, you know, more than that. So.
He is the most remarkable runner-up ever. The only number 2 to be remembered.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's almost like the most interesting man in the world. And I finished second place. You give me the trophy. Yeah. Like, you know.
well,
condoms wear me for protection.
well, there you go. But Jack Nicklaus actually finished second in more majors than he won. So he won 18, which is the record, and he finished second 19 times. Think about that.
Jesus.
Think about how close he was to winning like 30.
That is ridiculous.
That's ridiculous.
I wonder how many Tiger finished.
It is.
How many has he finished second?
Not very many. No.
He's either he's bomber.
Tiger was close to one of them.
He's bomber. You know, he's bomber bust. You know, he either wins it or goes out in the glory of non-firing glued action. Yeah, so, you know, that's. I think too many. I think Garcia is just sitting there on the phone. Wasn't it? Didn't he accuse Garcia from calling in on the phone from his hotel room because he didn't put the ball back or drop the ball in the right place or something? Wasn't that what it was? And costed him a lead.
The 2015 Masters when he
yeah.
when he didn't drop. Yeah, I don't know, but so Tiger has finished second in the Masters. He's won it 4 times, finished second twice. Okay, so Jack, in contrast, won six Masters. Okay, he won 6, and I'm counting up how many seconds he had, and it was a lot. Okay, so he finished second in 1964, in 1971, in 1977, in 1981. Okay, so he won 6 and finished second 4 times. So, that's 10 times in the top 2.
Jesus.
For Nicklaus at the Masters. That's crazy.
But you know what?
It's just insane.
I don't think that we could probably all agree, there's no one that has been finishing second more in sports than student athletes. I know we touched on it at the beginning of the show about how now student athletes may have legal grounds to not for the NCAA to not be allowed to limit their compensation. And I tried my darndest to brush over it at the beginning of the show, but to bring it into a better context, I'm going to bring in our business and legal contributor, Derek Helling. How are you doing tonight, Derek?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad. And I hear student athletes may be pretty damn excited here in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah. December 3rd of this year is the trial date in Jenkins versus NCAA, which is a suit that's been brewing for almost 4 years now. But we finally got a trial date for that, so that's exciting for not only the balance of student athletes who will and are currently playing NCAA sports, but for us sports law junkies as well, because there's a lot of intriguing arguments that are going to be made to Judge Claudia Wilkin at the Ninth Circuit Court in Oakland, California on that day.
Now, do you have to apply for a press credential for that, or can you just, show up?
Yeah.
You do?
Yes, yeah. And it will be, it'll be a hard to get, I guess, word to get, because obviously there's only so much space in the courtroom. And
I say we petition them to blow out a wall.
The case.
I mean, they could move a wall in that amount of time. I'm just saying, it's very possible. I've seen. They have enough people you can drive to the corner of Home Depot. And in California, you could pick up a few guys to move the wall back a little bit. It's just an idea. It'll be a great wall. The best wall you'll ever see in a courtroom. I trust it. We'll have the greatest people build the greatest wall. But we have to. I think we should. We need to Captain Planet that. With our powers combined. Let's see. Maybe if we can get you also an internship with the Associated Press, along with the several publications that you produce content for. I don't know. Maybe that'll just tip it over the edge.
I'm gonna try my best to be as close as I can get.
Also,
we'll see.
I got some people out there in Oakland. Some Cali people, man. We could catch a guy in the alley coming from the car, and you could hold on to his credential while he waits. I'm just saying, just throwing out some ideas there. We'll try application first, though. So So what are the ramifications of this? If we go in and say the student athlete wins here, how does this, in kind of like a timeline sort of way, how does this affect the NCAA and just first of all, like the NCAA? How does this change NCAA in the schools?
Yeah. Well, in a scenario in which the plaintiffs, in this case, Martin Jenkins and 3 other former student athletes, in a scenario in which they would be wildly successful with Judge Wilkin, who, by the way, for those in our audience who may recognize the name, she is the same judge that presided over O'Bannon, the NCAA. So that may be why some people recognize the name. If they're wildly successful with her, which is not a foregone conclusion at this point at all, because in a civil lawsuit, the party bringing the suit is responsible for the burden of proof, and so they will have to prove that the NCAA's restriction on athlete compensation is actually illegal. And that's right now, that might be difficult. But if they're able to do that, and assuming that Judge Wilkin's ruling in the plaintiff's favor would hold up upon appeals, because it's a foregone conclusion. What is a foregone conclusion is that if the NCAA gets served gets its butt beat in this suit, it'll immediately appeal from and probably all the way up to the Supreme Court, just like it did in O'Bannon. Supreme Court didn't grant cert, didn't take up O'Bannon, and it may not do that with this case either. But so, assuming once again that the plaintiffs are successful in all their arguments, and any ruling from Judge Wilkin in their favor holds up upon any and all appeals, what would happen for the NCAA is the NCAA would no longer be able to legally sanction athletes and or schools for compensating the athletes or receiving that compensation in any amount.
Now,
because it would be considered a legal monopoly. Now, that doesn't mean that the conferences that these schools are part of wouldn't be able to do that. They would still be able to do that. So you would still have a level of possible control above just the schools operating as standalone unions.
Because the NCAA could do something to their members, which would be the conferences, in the form if they allowed compensation. Is it kind of like they treat it as the federal versus like state government sort of thing? You know, the federal government says no, but Nevada's like, yes, you can pay for sex. So, you know.
that might be one of the issues that be breached in the court ruling. The one thing that we can say for sure is that the NCAA wouldn't be able to punish individual schools or athletes based for compensation limits, because the court would interpret that as a violation of the Sherman Act.
So, can you explain the Sherman Act a little bit more to our audience? Just kind of so they got a grips of it.
Yeah. Yeah, the Sherman Act is federal legislation that was enacted in the late 19th century, basically to bust up a bunch of illegal monopolies that had formed in this country. Around, if you've ever heard of Andrew Carnegie and his steel empire, that's an example of the kind of business conglomerate that the Sherman Act was intended to counteract. So basically, one company controlled all of the resources in one industry and was able to set prices and basically control everything from that regard. And so that is Article 1 of the Sherman Act, really speaks specifically to a company or a small group of companies conspiring together to place an artificial restraint on what employees in that industry can make, prices, and so on and so forth. And so that's why Article 1 of the Sherman Act comes into play here, because the argument that Jenkins and his co-plaintiffs are making is that the NCAA is violating that article by placing an artificial restraint on what they can earn.
Now, if I remember, I was looking, doing some of my show prep on this. Now, could there be a similar sort of argument on the NCAA's behalf, the same way that Major League Baseball argued that, they weren't part of interstate commerce, therefore antitrust doesn't apply?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's the big question before the court, is whether or not the NCAA's bylaws are actually regulated by the Sherman Act. So that's something that Judge Wilkin is going to have to decide upon. That's something that both sides are going to argue, obviously, one way or the other.
But she doesn't like NCAA.
So that. Yeah. Well, I mean, she ruled largely in O'Bannon's favor in O'Bannon versus the NCAA. She is the one that decided not to grant the NCAA's motion to dismiss this current case, Jenkins. So the precedent of the venue is very friendly to the plaintiffs based on that information. However, there's still a mountain that they have to climb that you just mentioned, proving that the NCAA's bylaws, that Article 1 of the Sherman Act actually has jurisdiction over them.
Yeah, so that's kind of the tough part. I mean, it's not tough for someone to literally read the rules, saying, "Hey, listen, you can't earn money off of your likeness." That language literally is there, and it's direct. You can't make money off of your likeness in relation to your school, your program, or the NCAA.
Your sport.
Yeah. But you can be involved, as we discussed, a few weeks ago, like the gentleman from Texas A&M, you can be a student athlete that's on scholarship and have a career in the same career or business or YouTube channel, make money off all of them in the same sort of industry and not be in violation. So that's kind of like, I can see how it's going to be.
You just have to pretend you're two different people.
Yeah. Exactly. You just have to, limit yourself. Again, you can't.
Clark Kent Superman thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Glasses do make. You know what the funny thing is? I sometimes I'll wear my glasses, sometimes I don't. But I don't know. People, I swear, people don't know who I am when I put glasses on. I swear. I'm like, I might be a superhero. I don't. If you guys see me flying one day, that's why I took my glasses off and I'm flying.
Was if you remember the Dean Cain, Terry Hatcher Superman series that was on back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Terry Hatcher was a guest host of Saturday Night Live during that era, and during her monologue, they played up that joke where other members of the cast would come out wearing glasses, and she would have no idea who they were, and they would take them off, and she would instantly recognize them. So, it was pretty good.
That's hilarious.
Okay, this is Kevin. I have a question for you. Darren, I have a question for you. So, let's get back to legalese here in a moment, for a second.
Of course.
Number one, a grant and aid agreement is a contract between the student and the school, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I sign a contract with the school and they say, okay, we're going to cover all of your room and board, all of your tuition, and reasonable cost of attendance, which is today's terminology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in exchange for that, you have to play football or basketball or track or soccer, what the hell it is, for us.
Yeah.
You know, for these coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you have to abide by NCAA rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I sign that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a compensation. There's due consideration for this now. This is not, I mean, on the one hand, we talk about student athletes getting taken advantage of a little bit at the higher levels. But the fact of the matter is, they are getting something. Put it this way.
Yeah.
I'm putting 3 girls through college.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay? I can tell you right now, they're getting something. And they're getting a lot.
I don't think any of them would say that we're getting nothing. Yeah.
Right. So what we're talking about here, I mean, it is a contract. And they signed the contract. Yeah. And I'm going to go to school.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get my room and board, and in most institutions today, that's a $50,000 a year thing.
Yeah.
So between 35 and 50 for state schools, and if you're going to Stanford or schools like that, that's 75. I mean, you're talking about a lot of money. And over the course of 5 years, I'm taking 5 years because these are 5. Because if you take a redshirt year, you're talking about $250,000 or more in compensation, right, for kids.
Yeah.
So I feel like on one basis, yes, I feel the NCAA has overstepped their bounds on a lot of this. I think they're being unfair in terms of capping somebody's ability to make money. But in terms of saying, well, they're signing their life away and getting nothing, I think that's a bunch of bull. I don't think that's accurate.
No.
And secondly, let me give you an example of if I work for a company and they compensate me for my job, and in most companies, if you develop a patentable idea under their employ, guess whose patent it is?
Of course. Yeah.
It's the company's. So in the case of the student athlete who's getting paid, and the university saying, well, wait a second, that jersey number that you wear is my jersey number, not yours. It's the university's jersey number. Okay? So within the field of endeavor that they're being compensated for, I can certainly understand that the university feels they have a claim to that. Okay? During the time that they're in school. Where I feel that the NCAA oversteps their bounds is saying we have to regulate or give a waiver of whether you do anything outside of that realm to make money or to do that, right? And so that I think is the gray area in this argument. I think the NCAA or the colleges are probably going to prevail when it comes to, wait a second, this is a contract and they're getting compensated. This is what we're going to compensate them for, and this is what the deal is. I think a court's going to go, okay, I get that, I understand that, and there's due consideration there. It's not like they're stealing from the kids, but it's when you get outside of that. And the other problem that I have is my problem is actually more with the NBA than it is with the NCAA. With the NBA going, we're going to arbitrarily make sure you're 19 when you come into the league, which forces you to college or someplace else for a year before you come to the NBA, which is causing all of this turmoil for just a handful of kids, right? I mean, it's like 20 a year. And of course, they're congregated at 5 or 6 schools. Duke gets 3 of them, Kentucky gets 6 of them, whatever. Which I think we're kind of making a mountain of a molehill in some cases because we're using college basketball as a bad example for the rest of the college athletics. I don't see football as broken, except that coaches make way too much money, and they can go anywhere they please, and the student athletes are stuck where they are, not being able to transfer. But the NCAA is already addressing that issue, right? That's already being addressed.
Yeah, they're taking away the non-compete from student athletes then?
What they're going to do is they're going to allow them to transfer under certain circumstances, right?
But then again, they can already transfer under certain circumstances, but the thing is, the coaches have to agree to it. They can say no.
Well, but they have to sit out a year.
They
have to sit out a year.
That's the other stink part too.
What this would allow them to do is to not have to sit out.
Yeah, and that's
kind
all
of a big deal.
That's all internal NCAA stuff. The law doesn't have anything to say about that to this point yet. What I would my response to what you just said is, first off, scholarship agreements are not part of this lawsuit whatsoever, between athletes and individual schools or their conferences. And the question of whether or not those are valid isn't what's before the court. In this case, what's before the court is, first off, does this federal law, the Sherman Act, have jurisdiction over NCAA bylaws? And if so, if Judge Wilkin decides that the answer to that question is yes, does the NCAA bylaws on capping what athletes can make, does that violate the Sherman Act? That's all that's being decided here. And despite how, I guess, legally simple this case is, the spin that the NCAA has put out since Judge Wilkin denied the motion to dismiss the case has been utterly, completely ridiculous and confounded and really, I guess, dramatized this whole thing to try to paint themselves as a victim and as the good guy in this situation. And it's been from a few NCAA execs, namely Mark Emmert, in an interview that he did with Andy Katz last Saturday, which was utterly ridiculous. And I'm not sure how he sat there and said what he said with a straight face, because it was a bunch of malarkey.
What did he say, just for those that didn't hear it?
That someone with a... basically the thrust of his argument for why NCAA member institutions can't pay their football and basketball players more than currently are full cost of attendance, those that are, is because if schools started doing that, they would do away with non-revenue sports, basically saying that if we had to pay Baker Mayfield, that if we chose to, not if we had to, but if we chose to pay Baker Mayfield more, so above and beyond full cost of attendance,
had a problem with the won't shut down.
Okay. Yeah. Then Oklahoma is going to shut down its softball team to make up for that expense.
Yeah.
And that's utterly stupid for several reasons. Number one, nobody has said that the extra compensation for Mayfield has to come from Oklahoma. Just using that as a hypothetical.
Yeah.
If you just simply remove the bylaws that penalize students and their schools if they receive third-party compensation, that's kind of a magic cure for this whole situation. Because the money wouldn't come from the school. The school doesn't have any extra expense. The school doesn't have to worry about violating Title IX. The school doesn't have to worry about breaking any tax laws. because the school's not giving another penny to Baker Mayfield. That's coming from Nike or from some sponsor there in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So
his argument,
so because Emmert completely sidestepped that.
Yeah, his argument is valid if he's talking about the schools being able to pay the athletes, because the schools themselves don't produce the revenue that it takes to even afford just paying the football team, let alone every other sport. So if they had to pay them like at $10 an hour, 20 hours a week, like an adjunct, like a student assistant, $10 an hour, 20 hours a week, along those lines, they wouldn't be. It was like, I think it was for football, it was like $2.4 million just for the football team, just the team. Again, you're honoring the same kind of contracts as you would.
I would say
it financially doesn't make sense.
Actually, even in that case. Well, I would say even in that case where the extra money going to the football or the men's basketball team is coming from the athletic department coffers. Emmert still doesn't have a leg to stand on, because you're going to tell me that instead of funding takes for a Big 12 softball team, that the school is going to rather shut that down rather than build an amusement park with a lazy river for their student athletes. That's what you're telling me is going to happen. That the University of Texas, instead of continuing to build locker rooms with lockers that cost $10,000 each, they're going to shut down the field hockey team. That's what you're telling me is going to happen. Then this whole program needs to go anyways. It all needs to be torn down and stripped down anyway.
Yeah, well, Emmert, let's establish one fact that we are in agreement of probably on this show, and there's probably a lot of people listening that would agree that the NCAA is broken, number one, and Emmert's the key brokey, okay? I mean, or broker, whatever you want to call it, right? Because he's the mouthpiece for an organization that is out of control. They make billions of dollars off the NCAA tournament, and they don't spend it correctly. We know that. And that's what's gotten them into the situation. Now, his argument about the whole funding of athletics, it's crazy, because I think he thinks we're all idiots, because college athletics are privately funded. They're funded outside the university. I mean, I'm sitting here at the University of Arkansas. Their athletic funding is over $100 million a year, and almost all of that comes from outside of the university. It doesn't come from the. It doesn't come from the athletics revenue generation at all. Put the pencil to it.
They do get state.
How do you have a $110 million athletic budget when
they do get subsidies, don't they?
When you're only generating. No, not much. I mean, okay, so out of Matt Morris's contract, new coach, football coach, I think he signed a $3.5 to $4 million deal, right? $300,000 of that is paid for by the university, by the state. The rest is paid for by the athletic foundation. Okay, and that's how all of it is through almost all the Power 5 schools. Now, I can't speak necessarily to Rice University and how they do things in the AAC, but when you look at the Power 5, and that's really what this is all about. This isn't about the non-Power 5. This is about and it's also only about. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. There's only a handful of athletes per school this really applies to. I mean,
that's what makes it even more ridiculous. Yeah, that's what makes the NIL even more ridiculous. Yeah. Because the percentage of the athletes that would actually have to worry about negotiating an endorsement deal is so minuscule that there's no reason to have the rules other than to just maintain control. That's it.
Yeah, and right, and if the NBA, as Adam Silver is promising, or is indicating, the promise is a wrong word, he's indicating that he is definitely in favor of doing away with the one and done rule and coming up with something different. whether it looks like the baseball rule, which we'll sign them out of high school, or they have to sign a letter of intent, go to college for 3 years. So go to 3 years.
G League is there, ready. So
right.
yeah,
they're about.
So now we're starting to whittle down the athletes this applies to, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, take the best college football team in the country, which I'm going to use Alabama because over the course of the last 10 years, they are the best college football team in the country, have been. How many guys on Alabama would even be in a position to do this? Think about it. Not many. Right?
No.
Right? I mean, well, number one, they're not a quarterback school. But let's who won the national championship this year? I mean, the Final Four: Clemson, Georgia, Alabama. Take those schools and go. Who can you name on those teams that would be negotiating their own stuff anyway? It's it's a handful, right? It's a star quarterback. It's Josh Rosen from UCLA, right? It's it's Baker. I'm not even sure Baker Mayfield. He was a transfer. He wasn't even he didn't come out of high school that highly touted, right? So you're not talking. So I agree. The NCAA's argument is ridiculous, and even if the courts do rule that the Sherman Act is in play here, I don't know how much impact it's going to have at the end of the day anyway. And besides, you got Title IX. You can't do away with the softball program.
Well,
you've got a federal law that
a couple things,
right? That dictates you got to have
to. I mean, it would. I mean, there's other ways to be compliant, but it would take some finagling. You'd probably have to eliminate some guys' schools, some guys' sports as well, to stay compliant if you were going to go that route. But once again, the money is there to support these sports and further compensate the men's basketball and the football players as well. That's just not the angle that they want to play up right now.
Right.
And aside from the other ridiculous thing that came out of the NCAA spin machine over the past few days is that further compensation in the revenue sports, men's basketball and football. Are you ready for this? This is probably the richest thing that I've heard. Would harm the competitive balance. When I heard that, I busted out laughing. I was like, what? Are we just making anything up now? Just like, what competitive balance? So, like, do you guys also ride unicorns to work every day in fantasy land? I was like, what's going on here?
Because their current system of allowing teams and conferences to schedule their... I mean, like, is this going to get me on my little soapbox about, not having 9 conference games and not playing, all FCS schools and, the second to last game in the season, scheduling Mercer.
Yeah.
It's upsetting.
Yeah, Villanova. Yeah,
you know
Villanova
what?
just won their second national championship in 3 years, right? Alabama just won their 5th national championship in 11 years. In lacrosse, you got the same teams winning every year. Baseball, you got the same teams to the College World Series.
Absolutely.
What competitive balance?
The funny thing is, you're talking about this. Just speaking about those Alabama players, think about how much more money, illegitimate money, Trent Richardson would have made. Like, he made all that money as a pro and didn't do anything. But as a college athlete, at least the money would have been better well spent. I'm just saying.
It's very possible.
Hey, Alabama, just also Arkansas. They run about a 2% on average subsidy each year. 2%.
Yeah, that's nothing.
About $2 million.
No.
Yeah,
just enough to pay the football team.
Yeah. So it's the first week of April, which means we've got 8 more months of this ridiculous PR noise from the NCAA coming out before the trial. So, I mean, if it's already starting out at this point, and it's only going to spiral downward from here, I can't imagine what ridiculousness we're going to have by the time mid-November rolls around.
We
might be looking. Yeah, we might be looking at some of like Ancient Aliens stuff, where like we could pay the football and men's basketball players more, but because the pyramids are positioned the way they are, it unfortunately just makes it impossible for us to work it out.
Well, what's interesting about this is that the NCAA universities could have avoided this situation if they'd been more reasonable in the past.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
that's
30 years,
here,
30
right?
years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago when this really started becoming a commercial enterprise, and we're talking big money.
Mm-hmm.
They could have at that point said, "Hey, let's take the NIL name, image, likeness, language out of the scholarship agreements, out of the NCAA bylaws. Let everybody make what the market will bear. And that's everyone. Whether you're a football player or a woman who is on the rowing team at your school. Let everybody do it." That would have headed off a lot of these issues at the past, where it never would have become a problem at all. And once again, that's something that they could do tomorrow. They could get the board together and vote on those changes, implement them, and that would take away a lot of these issues. Will they do it? Of course.
Also,
yeah.
No, and also, here's where I think it started getting out of control even more recently, is when the coaches' salaries started to skyrocket, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Rick Pitino is making close to 8 figures, right, between the shoe money and everything, and Nick Saban's making $8 to $10 million, and I mean, listen, he is.
$15 million.
Press conference got a Coke can, right? He's got a Coke can, and he's got the Coke bottle, So I feel that for me personally,
90 seconds.
I don't think I'm a singular voice in this. Is when the coach's salary started to get really big, listen, if Arkansas can pay their football coach $4 million a year and then fire him and pay him a $17 million buyout, things have gotten out of control, right?
Yeah.
And the student athletes sitting there going, wait a second. And my argument, Matt, I've said this many times.
Yeah, I've kind of argued for that.
60 seconds.
Is he going to go? Is he going to go sell cars now? No, he's still going to coach football. It's gotten out of control. And it's the same thing I say about Major League Baseball. The salaries of Major League Baseball are ridiculous. Okay, but at least those guys are playing; they're getting paid to play. The coaches, when you have the disparity between the coaches and people actually with talent, performing. It's really the only kind of industry like that, and that's what's gotten them in this problem. They brought it on themselves.
I'll let BB Abbott.
That's another reason.
I was texting with BB Abbott the other day. He's the agent responsible for that Chipper Jones contract that kind of got the whole thing rolling. I'll let him know later this week that you appreciate his contribution to the sport of baseball.
Well, what you were just talking about is another reason why Emmett said about non-revenue sports is so ridiculous, is because if you think that there's no money for the tennis team, don't pay Art Briles $15 million not to coach anymore.
Yeah.
Simple.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Don't pay Brett Bielema $11 million. Don't pay all these guys all these buyouts don't pay Les Miles. What was his buyout? Holy crap. His buyout at LSU was exorbitant.
I think he lives in Lincoln now.
Salaries, listen, cut their salaries by $1 million. A lot with $1 million, right? And like I said, they're not
all your
going
non-revenue sports are funded right there. Yeah. Yep.
Right there, and I really don't think Urban Meyer's qualified to do anything else but coach football. And so, right?
You didn't like him as a broadcaster?
We're going to cut you back. Well, he can do that, okay, but that's something like that. I mean, there's a lot of area between what he makes as a broadcaster and makes as a football field that you can have wiggle room.
Jimbo wasn't Jimbo a lawyer? Or really? No, he was a realtor. He was in real estate.
Gosh.
Jimbo Fisher was in real estate before he was coach.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not.
Meyer wasn't bad. Meyer wasn't bad.
But my point is,
he was no Steve Spurrier.
No. But my point is that, and I'm agreeing with you, is that they brought this on themselves.
Absolutely.
They could head this off at the pass, but they chose not to. And so they chose this path, and they're going to pay for it. I say literally pay for it in many ways. And the money has to come from somewhere. And they've gotten themselves in a big hole, and they can't say it's not there because it is there. I'm talking about SEC, Big Ten, ACC school. I'm talking about the big money school. The Big Ten schools have gobs of money. Okay, and not to mention the Big Ten network. The Big Ten network is incredibly profitable. I mean, that thing is a gold mine. The Longhorn network for Texas, the SEC network does pretty well, although in conjunction with ESPN. But these are massive commercial enterprises, and it's all on the backs of the student athletes. And they did this. They did this to themselves. And so I don't care what happens to them because I think they deserve it. To be quite honest with you, they don't have a. And the NCAA's been sitting on the sidelines. They negotiated the $1 billion deal for the NCAA tournament. They take all that money. What do they do with it? I have no idea. But they
give it out.
People very, very.
Yeah. So they that's been reported on pretty widely because as a 501c3, they're pretty regulated by how they can spend their money to maintain that charter. And the vast majority of the revenue that they bring in is distributed to their membership. However, that's just the schools. So
that's right.
It's not like they're feeding starving kids in Africa with it. I mean, they're just delving it out.
And it's actually like
their membership.
It's like 90. What was it like 90% too? Yeah. Goes to Division I schools.
Yeah.
And their championship games, like 90. I think it was like 90. I think it was like 92%, all but like 8%. It's crazy.
So that's factual, and that's something that they love to trumpet because they're like, oh, we don't keep all the money, but just like that's like, but you exist because of your membership. I mean, that would be like a husband handing over all of his boasting about handing his wife all of his 90% of his paycheck that goes to the same account. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I was going to use these exactly. Kid.
Yeah.
Well, that's just called being married, right?
Yeah, it's like you still have access to that money. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't leave the family. It doesn't leave the family, right? It doesn't leave the entity.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't go to the student athletes. It goes to the institutions, right? So it's like when the money got big, listen, money corrupts. Money corrupts, and when it corrupts, it does. And we've already seen it, the tip of the iceberg in the basketball thing. Now, I still disagree that that's a bad thing. I mean, if a shoe company wants to give a kid money, why can't they give a kid money? I don't see where there's a crime, right? I've got a issue with it.
Yeah, explain that.
We talked about that before, but show me the crime. But it does say though that they weren't exactly forthcoming with it. They were hiding it. So when you're trying to hide something, then why are you hiding it? And so it's a mess. Now I don't know if I saw something this week. Matthew, you might have seen it. Is there a conversation about Condoleezza Rice taking some kind of position to do the basketball stuff? Is there some talk about her taking a leadership role in that, or somebody taking a leadership role in this whole basketball commission thing? They're trying to fix the sport.
Well, she was on the college football playoff committee for a while.
Right.
I think she still is, actually.
And but yeah, I haven't heard or seen anything about her stepping into a bigger role with any one school or conference or the NCAA itself. But as everyone who knows me will attest to, I am not the fount of all knowledge either. So the fact that I'm unaware that something is happening or has happened does not mean much. So
it might have just been somebody. It might have just been somebody saying wouldn't be a bad idea. But for me, I'm hoping that the Sherman Act issue. I want the NCAA to go away, with the exception of running championships. I think they do a good job of running championships. That's as a body that pulls championships together. Because I've been to several NCAA championships, they do a great job. They're incredibly well run. If you've never been to an NCAA tournament game or Final Four or College World Series or whatever, they do an incredible job at that. They really do. I mean, things are done. They're well run. But the rest of it, the whole oversight and regulation part of it, they just have let that get out of control. And as we talked before, I mean, some member schools that are basically the 12-member board that oversees the NCAA, they're all in it. They're all in it together. And so it's very difficult to say, well, it's NCAA. No, it's the schools, because the schools, as members of the NCAA, are in charge of the NCAA. And so there's college presidents.
The only reason
there's
the
college
NCAA has any authority at all, is because the schools have collectively agreed to give that to them. Yeah.
Yes. It's like blaming Roger Goodell for something and giving the owners a pass.
What the owners do. Yeah.
He works for the owners, right? I mean, he takes his the owners have allowed him to be the fall guy or to be the front guy, but it's the NFL, it's the owners. It's not Roger Goodell, and it's not the NCAA. It's the member schools.
So I got
of those member schools.
I got a question, Derek. We talked a little bit about this last week on the show. How the new legislation has affected Major League and minor league baseball. Is this kind of, if the appeals don't go through, is this something that you see them really pushing to get to make sure that students are seen as seasonal employees or not regular employees?
Well, that would be probably the result of a different course of action in the courts. Jenkins is not arguing that the NCAA athletes are employees of the university that they play their sports for. Jenkins is simply arguing that Sherman Act should have jurisdiction over NCAA bylaws, and NCAA bylaws are in violation of Article 1. If another lawsuit were to arise somewhere else in a federal court that argued that NCAA athletes are employees of the universities that they play their sports for, those plaintiffs were to win, a ruling were to hold up on appeals, and that would theoretically, and all the athletes of NCAA member institutions entitled to federal, state, local minimum wage and overtime laws. In that scenario, you probably would see the NCAA use some of that basketball tournament money that it claims to give away, but always has access to anyways, to lobby members of Congress to get a similar exemption for its new quote-unquote employees. But it would probably only happen in that scenario because classifying these athletes as employees is something that probably the NCAA would rather avoid any legislative body having a conversation on. And so for that reason, you're not going to see them press for such a codification until when and if it should become necessary for them.
So let me ask you this, Sarah. So the Sherman Act was designed to basically break up monopolies like oil, for instance, right? The railroad, and et cetera. I think Standard Oil was a big one too. Those kind of things. Well, so the suit maintains that the NCAA is a monopoly, but you've also got the NCAA out there. You've got some other organizations and there's nothing that says that member schools have to be a member of the NCAA. So I'm wondering where's the argument? Where's the argument that this is a monopoly? How does that? I mean, I'm going right to the crux of the argument, right? Because if they're arguing Sherman Act, they're arguing that it's a monopolistic practices, right? Not just that it's a monopoly, because there are certain natural monopolies that take place. Power companies, for instance. I mean, there are some things that within a certain jurisdiction, it's just natural to have a monopoly. You don't need all this other stuff. And so it's the monopolistic practices. What practices are they arguing that are monopolistic that would bring this under the Sherman Act?
Well, as I've already said, the restriction on earnings potential. There's a pretty strong precedent for that in many other industries throughout constitutional law, and
real estate being one of them.
Courts have weighed in. Yeah, I mean, courts have weighed in on those issues for decades and decades and decades. And as far as the other issue that you alluded to of why couldn't because the NAIA and other smaller athletic regulation and consolidation organizations exist, you maybe could argue that that schools have a choice of which body to be a part of, and I would say absolutely that they do. However, the question before the court isn't about options for the schools, it's about options for the athletes, and the restrictions that are placed upon them, which are not inherent in the industry but are artificially imposed.
Well, that's a big question, right? Because I'd say for the majority of student athletes, they're getting a pretty good deal.
Yeah. But Judge Wilkin in her order kind of gave the plaintiffs kind of a running start in one regard. She defined pretty clearly what the NCAA needs to come back to court, because it already argued this to a certain degree in O'Bannon. The issue wasn't really decided. So she defined pretty clearly what the NCAA has to come back and defend now, and that's the big one. Is what we've talked about a few times already, the whole matter of the Sherman Act. She said that it's already beyond dispute, in her opinion, that athletes would receive more compensation if these restraints were removed. So in her mind, that's already settled. and she's not going to entertain the debate on that particular issue. So, we're free to debate it. But as far as the counsel who will appear before Judge Wilkin on December 3rd, that is a moot point.
Well, I'll make an argument that isn't quite the same as Mark Emmert's, because he didn't frame it the way I would frame it. Is in total they may receive more compensation, but you could see college football going the route of college baseball, where you're talking about half scholarships or okay. Let's put it in that term. The value. So today, let's just say that your average public scholarship for 5 years is, let's just use the terms of $200,000 just as a point of reference. Okay, it's not totally accurate. But so you've got 85 guys getting $200,000, right? Well, if they decide that this can be competitive and that people can negotiate, well, you may end up with 40 guys at $80,000 and 30 guys at $200,000 and 15 guys at $1 million, because you got to balance the budget. And so there's two arguments here. It's the argument that there's more money available that's not being given to the athletes, or is it that the way that it's being distributed is not right? So those are two different arguments, okay? Because if you're arguing that the 85 scholarships of $200,000 is all we got, well, then you've got to reshuffle the deck in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. And so I would maintain that the judge may not be looking at this in the best light. In other words, this may be something that penalizes a large majority and give a very, very small minority more money.
Yeah.
But that may end up, and listen, and with all the other stuff going on in college football with concussions, everything else, this could kill the sport. Now, Emmert's argument was it'll kill the non-revenue sports. I have a different argument. This could actually decimate college football, because who's going to play?
Yeah.
Where's going to get your play?
I guess my rebuttal would be that the competitive nature of the market for these athletes and for their services, because of the revenue potential that exists in college football, if you're successful on the field, especially in a sustainable manner, would create the incentive for the programs to build competitive and equitable rosters within not only amongst each other, but within their own locker rooms. And I think that a pretty good example of that is, if you look at professional sports, you've got guys on the team who are making various different levels of money. And they accept that as part of the business, and they accept that as something that their teammates have earned with their success, whether as athletes or as celebrity figures, and they still work towards a common goal of winning and performing well on the field in order to sustain those careers and the circumstances in which they're currently in. I would argue that a lot of those same situations will replicate themselves in college football.
No, it won't. It won't. It's a different situation. To stay in college football, you have to pay for your education. if the professional athlete is just like the rest of us, they go in and make money at a job, and whatever you make, that's what you make. But if you're playing college football, and part of the deal is you have to be a student athlete, and part of the deal is you have to go to class. Part of the deal is you have to fund those classes. If the school offers you $100,000 and the education is $250,000, you can't make ends meet, so you're not going to play. You can't go. That's all. So relating this to professional athletes, athletics, and still keeping the stipulation that they have to be student athletes, it's apples and oranges. It's not even the same argument.
Well, perhaps
how do you make that?
Perhaps we could just remove the student part of it then.
Well, there you go. Now you're back into the employee. Now you're just going to have a minor league system that is funded through who's funding that now?
There goes government subsidies.
The boosters.
Well, the boosters can't donate the same way because it's not tax deductible the same way.
Yeah. You could you could set it up as its own 501c3.
It is, but what I would maintain is that this, and I said this earlier, and I think you'd agree with this. You agreed with it. Is that the schools themselves have messed this up because overall the system really isn't broken. Not in football, basketball, yes. Football, it's not. And so, what they're doing is they're bringing a lawsuit for 100% of the institution, 100% of the student athletes, when it only applies. Listen, less than 3% of college football players go on to be professional, and even then, the average career of a football player is 3.5 years. Yeah, it's less than their college time.
It's 2.
So we're almost like
it went down to 2.
Off their noses, spike their face, right? Well, it's now 2.
The only caveat that I would place beside that
3 years is to be vested.
Is that I think you can look at the situation at a lot of the Power 5 schools and look at the revenue that these college football players are playing a part. They're not the sum total. Of course, the coaches and everybody else involved is also playing a part in bringing in, and compare it even to the value that they get, even counting in the cost of the education if they're getting one. We could debate that as well. And I think that probably in a lot of the situations, even if they have no chance at the NFL, you still argue that what they're receiving, even in that situation, in that scenario, isn't commensurate to the value that they're bringing in.
Yeah, that's a tough argument, right? I mean, because how do you place what is it they're bringing in, right? Is it private donation? Is it ticket sales? Is it this is a complicated issue, right?
It says absolutely, yeah,
right, because revenue generation. If you're talking about strictly revenue generation, which is tickets, parking, and concessions.
Well, don't forget broadcast rights as well.
Broadcast rights, okay, but the strictly revenue generation, right? That's a tough one. That varies drastically from school to school.
Yeah,
and I will say this, that for Mark Emmert, one of the reasons that NCAA has the rules that they have, and now I'm going to talk about the other side of the fence because I'm a Gemini and I can argue both sides of anything. But it was to maintain competitive balance across different revenue generation platforms. For instance, University of Michigan has a lot more capability to generate revenue than Wake Forest. and yet Wake Forest and University of Michigan are both Power 5 schools, and they do so because they fall under very similar guidelines, right? That Michigan can't pay their people what they in Wake Forest gets the same break, and so what you're looking at here is potentially changing the face of college athletics. Now I don't know what that would look like, and I agree with you at some level, at a macro level. And by the way, I have a degree in economics and an MBA. Okay, so I know how to do finance, and so at a macro level, I get it. At a macro level, the money's there. At a macro level, yes, I can see the argument. At a macro level, we're dealing with 135 Division I college football teams. We're dealing with 358 Division I college basketball teams. We're dealing with almost 400 Division I college baseball teams, right? And so that gets to the micro level. So how do you deal with the Wake Forest with a 3,000 student enrollment and a probably $80,000 a year tuition versus a University of Wisconsin with 65,000 student enrollment and probably $30,000 a year, right? How do you balance all that at the micro level? And I think although Emmert didn't say it very well, but I do agree in part with the I guess the intent or the what was behind what he was saying was be careful here because you're messing with a model that for a long time has worked pretty well. It's brought a lot of kids into school that couldn't afford it, and they walk away with no student loans and education. And I would argue, yes, there are some student athletes who don't take advantage of that education. There's a lot to do, right? And so
absolutely.
I would maintain this is a very dangerous area they're getting into in terms of college athletics, and I would maintain that it's only for a very few. There's not many letter for
I completely agree with you on those points. Yeah,
right. And so we're trying to balance the fairness for the macro, the fairness for all student athletes versus what's fair for the very few that are particularly gifted that should be able to make their own way. And so that's a very difficult. It's more complicated than we just got to pay the players, right?
I agree.
It gets more complicated than that. Now, from my perspective, and having been an advocate of this for a long time, I think going to compensating the student athletes for cost of attendance went a long way in my mind to easing some of this, because my big concern was always. And frankly, this is not a racist thing. It's fact. The large majority of football and basketball players are African American on most campuses, and the student body as a whole is not largely African American unless you're at a historically black college or university. And so you take the University of Arkansas, which I'm familiar with, and Virginia Tech, where I went, where the minority population might be 10%. Or 5%, if that. And you put these kids in that situation, you say, you got a scholarship. They can't even go to McDonald's. They don't be walking around. They don't have it. And they're stealing computers and they're doing all sorts of screwy things, right, to try to get money. Well, the cost of attendance, I think, evened that playing field more, no pun intended. And I think that helped a lot in saying, since it costs a lot to go here, we're going to give you $100 a month or $100 a week, whatever it is, to in your pocket. I think that went a long way to alleviate some of the concerns that I always had, in terms of that. And now we're taking that another step, and I don't know that we'll have to see. I understand it's the law, and I understand all that there are some concerns, but we got to be careful here. This is.
I completely agree that.
Right?
That it's something that is going to have to be, even if the court sides with the plaintiffs. Ultimately, the courts system in this country does, and bars the NCAA from enforcing those bylaws. In my mind, the burden of deciding what the new system is going to look like is going to fall on the conferences. And I completely agree with you that in determining what's right for them, either individually or as a group, because there would be nothing to stop, let's say the Pac-12 and the Big Ten from sharing notes and deciding and saying, this is what we're looking at doing. What have you guys been talking about? That they've got to be, very careful about, and you're never going to be able to account for all the unintended consequences of your decisions. But I completely agree. It's not something to do to simply take let's just fly by the seat of our pants and deal with problems as they arise kind of approach to it.
Well, and it concerns me that the judge has already taken a stance that is may or may not be in the best interest of the plaintiffs, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you got to look at the whole problem all the way around it. And and by the way, the Power Five conferences have long considered pulling away anyway, right? I mean, the NCAA had a hard time keeping them in the circuit.
They already have, so
yeah, they pretty much have. Yeah, they pretty much have, right? And so because the NCAA doesn't operate the college football playoff. I mean, that's outside their purview. Now they do recognize the winner of the college football playoff as an NCAA champion, right? Yeah. But that's kind of that they kind of have to, right? But this is going to be fascinating to see where this goes. And of course, we've got, as you said, 8 more months of this crap to, this posturing and everything else to figure out, where this goes. But I hope they don't do something knee-jerk or precipitous that doesn't take into consideration, the impact on the student athlete population as a whole. Because
and
most of these kids,
there's some real fear of that because it's because I think there might be some kind of attitude of, let's make some adjustments voluntarily ourselves before the courts decide for us what we're going to do.
They should have done that 10 years ago, but that's okay.
Yeah, I mean that's long overdue. But I can see how if it looks like things are going to continue to go south, because they already have to some degree for the NCAA, and they might try to once again hit that off at the pass and be like, well, let's try to work out a system now before the courts impose something on us, which might be kind of presumptuous because the court would not be imposing any kind of a system upon the NCAA if it rules for the plaintiffs in this situation. All it would be doing is determining that one section of the NCAA bylaws are illegal. Basically saying this is what you can't do versus this is what you have to do. So, does that make sense? Yeah.
Which means that at some point this all comes down to college presidents, by the way. It's not athletic directors. This is college presidents who obviously have to deal with a lot more than just athletics. They have to deal with the academic side and all that kind of stuff, fundraising and research and everything else.
Yeah.
They might just take a wait and see attitude and okay, we'll react when it happens and we'll figure it out. I mean, I don't know, but they haven't exactly acted prudently throughout the entire 30 some odd years of right. So I'm skeptical to think all of a sudden they'll catch religion and do something right in the next
Yeah, I share your pessimism on that regard.
Yeah, so they have it, but it's interesting, and I'm glad your insight's awesome, and the information given, because I don't think a lot of people realize, that they're sitting on this precipice of it's just like when the FBI gets involved in college basketball, you go, oh, wait a second, you got the federal court, the Sherman Act, and you've got the FBI looking at these are entities that are serious in what they do, and they have serious implications in what they decide. I mean, the NCAA is nothing but a bunch of people in Indianapolis who take their marching orders from college presidents. You start getting federal courts involved, it becomes some serious business, if I'm not mistaken.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, and that's why the NCAA has been putting out propaganda pretty much every day. And like I said, we got about 8 more months to come yet of it, because this is something that could affect them in many ways, very seriously, that none of us probably realize yet at this point.
Yeah, and I would advise the college presidents to bring Mark Emmert into the room and tell him to shut up, because the NCAA is nothing. It's you say NCAA, but NCAA is just colleges. It's not a standalone entity. They're powered by the universities, and so he's not doing them any favors, I don't think, unless they want that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's kind of like being Donald Trump's. It's kind of like being Donald Trump's press secretary and standing up there every day trying to tell the nation what Donald Trump is thinking. Yeah. I wouldn't want that job either.
No. That's not a job that I think anybody would want. And I really don't understand why those who are doing it are doing it. So, I mean, like the money can't be that good. I really can't imagine that. But no, I imagine that Sunday morning when a lot of college presidents saw the Emmert interview with Andy Katz, there were a lot of face palms at that time. And it's just like, why? I mean, I don't know. He probably didn't get the questions beforehand, but you had to know that was going to come up 2 days after Judge Wilkins' order. You knew that question was going to come up in some way, shape, or form, and that's the answer you prepared.
And Andy Katz
2 days to work on.
Andy Katz is a skilled interviewer, so that's I don't know. Of course, as we've talked about, I mean, my confidence in the universities and the NCAA handling this appropriately is minimal, because they haven't done a very good job in the past, and that's why I don't know. I guess I must have seen on social media somebody recommending that somebody like Condoleezza Rice, step in and try to, because they need help.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The problem is their PR machine isn't very good, because they do a lot of really, really good things, right? I mean, think about the number of student athletes who come out of college, and think about the amount of enjoyment we get from athletics. Think about how all the good stuff. I mean, my daughter just committed to play soccer at Mary Washington. Okay, so I've got a daughter who's going to be in the system. Okay,
wonderful, and
they do a lot of great things. But man, this bad PR is a bad optic. It is, unfortunately.
Just like I think they handle it in the house, and I'm like, what company of that size else handles their own PR? It's like there are businesses where that's all they do. Yeah, I was just like, I went on a media trip for Budweiser the week before last, and
that was fun to see on Instagram.
Budweiser,
by the way,
hires that out. They don't do that. Yeah, and I was like, they don't do that. Why would the NCAA have its own? But I mean, that's just another sign of, hey, you're doing it wrong.
There's an entire street in New York City called Madison Avenue. That's all they do, right? I mean, that's what they do.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah.
Why would you?
Right.
But listen, people do it all the time. It's people that try to represent themselves in court. I mean, why would you? Why would you do that? I mean, I'm the kind of guy that I get any kind of issue at all, I call my attorney. I mean, little things.
That's why you're paying them. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a friend of mine, and I'll call him and I'll say, should I be talking to you about this, or should I handle it myself? And 99% of the time, and because I know him, he's being honest. He's not just trying to get my money. He's like,
of course,
you can't do that yourself. That's not something you want. Well, I'll give you an example. I a few years ago, my job was eliminated, and they gave me this pittance of a severance package. I went to my attorney. I said, should I get more? He goes, yeah. He said, I'll write the letter. I'll do it for you. You know what he got me? He got me 5 times what they were going to give me.
Nice.
But so that's an example, though. Why is Emmert out there? He should have gotten the questions beforehand, gone to his PR firm, said, give me the answer, and then just read them, right? Yeah. And if he gets stumped, he goes, I'm not. Yeah, because not prepared.
Yeah, you're the president of the NCAA. If you insist on having the questions prior, they're going to give you the questions prior because they want you on the interview.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
You know who Emmert looked like? Emmert looked like Cam Newton after the Super Bowl. Right?
He did.
Cam Newton walked in. Right. He's tired. It's like, Cam Newton. He wasn't dressed quite as well.
Next question.
Cam had a little more fashion stuff going on. But
I was gonna say Wade Phillips at any given moment on the sidelines of an NFL game.
That's just Wade Phillips.
There you go. That's a good one.
He's an awesome follow on Twitter, by the way.
Wade was
sneaky good follow.
And Wade was a decent football coach, but I don't know. Maybe it's just the way I perceived him, but he always looks like he's just confused. Yeah, it's just like the natural way his face looks.
Well, when he was a head coach, he was confused. As a defensive coordinator, he's awesome, right? But
absolutely.
But maybe Emmert should do the Belichick thing and come in with the hoodie, and when the questions get too hard, he just puts the hoodie up and he's done. It's like he'd be like, I don't like that question. So let's do another one, Andy.
I'm just here to focus on I'm talking about the next game.
Oh, he's pulling the Belichick thing. I got what he's doing there.
Or come in with get a wristband.
Look at like it's a play call. 9 = 7 loop.
Yeah, that's question 3.
Next question.
My answer is whatever for the best interest of the student athlete. There you go.
There you go.
That was the question.
Yes.
That's my answer. Yeah.
Or he can, or they can always do the classic congratulation, say a positive statement, and then just change the topic. They're like, you know what, that's a great question, thank you.
Yep.
We're all looking out for our student athletes, but we need to be sure that we keep in mind that, we're giving 97% of this back to the schools, and very mediocre amount of this goes to this sort of whatever. By the way, we're doing this great thing for cancer patients and kids and getting involved in lots of these communities. So it didn't answer the question, but it sounded good,
No.
It's, it's funny. Can I ask you guys a question?
It's the PK Frazier way.
Yeah.
It's the PK Frazier way.
Yeah.
Remember when the guy from the FBI?
Do. Yeah.
PK Frazier he actually turns around and asks another question. He's just like, well, like the guy. Remember the guy from the FBI says, did you take the money? And PK Frazier said, why would I take the money? He just said, why would I take the money? And the guy was like, oh, so you take the money. And PK Frazier says, well, what reason would I have? And then they went on. So, of course, that's fiction. That's from my brain. But,
of course.
Yeah, can you see Emmert going,
it works in Kevin's life every time.
He catch it and answer a question. Yeah, it would have been great. What would Nick Saban say? That's where you go. And then just right off.
There you go.
He'd smile.
He wasn't coached very well. So,
He'd smile. So I got a question. I had a real scenario. That's a real.
Just watch.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, you have a watch store.
Right, I'm just saying he just needs to watch a few Belichick or Popovich.
Popovich.
Yeah.
Popovich thing.
Yeah, he's thinking about it actively. Like, it's kind of like a jerk move, but it's going to be kind of funny in kind of a jerky way.
Mm-hmm.
But you just want to wait for that.
Right.
I
enjoy it.
But okay, so I had this incident. I don't know if maybe I was a jerk or something. So if you call, so I called to cancel Showtime, right? I called to cancel Showtime. I didn't want to pay for Showtime every month anymore. And I was like a couple days late. And she said, well, we'll prorate it on your next bill. I was like, just so I'm clear, that's going to be taken off my next bill. You're not going to refund that. She's like, no, we don't do any refunds. Now, I know they do because they have in the past, but I didn't want to argue that. I let it go. So I said, so how much is being refunded? She said, well, the difference is going to be refunded. I said, I understand that, but you didn't answer my question. In a dollar amount, how much is that?
Yeah.
She's like, whatever that is. And I was like, well, there's, there's 31 days in March. When is the billing cycle? I mean, can you bring out a calculator and let me know the dollar amount? And she's like, well, let me put you on hold. My wife was upset because she said I was being a jerk for making her get a calculator out. And I was just like, no, that's called her job. It's basic math. It's called proration.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Maybe I was being a jerk.
You know that she's got her phone right there anyway at the desk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's only a couple days. And I know it's close to what I paid. But I wanted to know what it was. How much it was. It was a simple question. And it was just, I guess kind of was more irritated that she said, well, whatever it is. Well, it's like, well, what is that? It's a simple math question.
Knew, I wouldn't ask.
Yeah. I mean, it's just,
Well,
I don't know.
Well, Matthew, she was probably a millennial. I'm surprised she didn't come back and say, what's a calculator?
I know.
If I was her, I'd have shown you. I would have just said, what's a calculator? And then, you had to tell her what that is.
Do kids in middle and high school still use graphing calculators?
They do.
Like calculus and trigonometry?
No, they do.
What?
They have
No,
those.
it's called an iPhone. It's called an iPhone.
No, they don't allow phones because you can store different things, apps in your phone. But the funny thing is, like a graphing calculator, you can literally save your answers in the graphing calculator and go into a folder and pull up answers and formulas and stuff like that. But you could still use those. You're actually required to use those. Because if you take my licensing test, I had to go find the oldest TI whatever calculator I could find. It was one that you could only turn on by sitting in the sun for 3 hours for a week. You just had to bake in the sun for 3 hours at least a day for a week to where, the keys melted.
On Mercury, not on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, I found two. I didn't know which one I could use because they're picky about it. So they said both were okay. So I was doing some practice stuff in the car before I went and took the test, and it wouldn't do decimals. So it was rounding everything up to the whole number. And I'm like, crap, I need decimals. So I switched calculators, and the other one did it fine. But I was like, because it was a newer looking one, so I was just going to take it. But I wasn't even going to mess with it. But I went ahead and said, let me make sure. Good thing I did, because otherwise, you get down to the pennies on stuff, and it's like, kind of need to know that. Looks like the only difference in the options are the pennies.
Was that a Texas Instruments calculator?
Yeah, exactly.
Only did whole numbers?
No, well, it's screwed up on the settings.
So
I screwed up the settings somehow. I don't know how to fix it.
Okay. All righty. Okay.
If you're my real estate agent, Matthew, does everything round up to $300,000? Is that what happens now? So it's like, hey Matthew, what should we offer for this house?
Well, everything's negotiable in real estate, Kevin. I guess that's the accurate answer.
That's what the calculator says.
Well, the funny thing is, like, a lot of times with taxes, like, if you ever looked at your return, everything is rounded up or rounded down. Or rounded up, actually. Everything is rounded up to the next dollar.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you're donating extra cents to the government every year. You know? Unless you talk to certain people, they say, oh, that's an optional program. You don't have to pay taxes. It's like, I'm going to opt in. I don't want to deal with the consequences if I don't.
Like the... It's exactly like the virus that was implanted into the system in Office Space. They took the percentages of the pennies. That's what's going on.
So it's like, yeah, in some situations, yes. So it's like if you're doing taxes, like you're figuring tax stamps, the deed stamp, you know, the tax stamps, those are rounded up. Like if you have one penny, that's rounded up to the next $100.
Yeah.
But you pay 2% of it. So it's like,
of course,
it's like 2 cents for every 100. But if 1 penny, that equals 100. So you're actually paying an extra 2 cents because there was 1 cent. Like, it's 2 cents, but you know, we have?
It's my percent.
Is decimals that
absolutely
encumbering? You know, like it's if you have a $3.5 million house, is 27 cents? Is it? You guys can't figure that out. What is it?
Yeah, you know what it is. Everybody at the IRS is using those Texas Instrument calculators, and they got the setting stuck on the whole number. They can't figure out how to get it off.
Exactly. It's probably, that seems perfectly logical.
That's what it is. Yep.
I've had that happen before. I don't know if I ever told you guys about that, but that happened to me once.
TI needs to go do an in-service and be like, okay, here's how to change the setting, and then that problem will absolutely be solved.
I should call them and see I'm calling to see what the warranty is on this Texas Instruments calculator. It's stuck on whole numbers, and I can't get it off. Can you send me a new one?
You're going to get the same woman that you got calling to cancel Showtime.
I know.
Yeah,
she's like, we can send you a check for a prorated rate. When did you buy it? I was like, I don't know.
But
what is that dollar amount?
Her name is Mary. Her name is Mary when you call for Showtime, and it's going to be like Josephine when you call back the other thing. She'll be like,
I know.
That's how it works. It's just the same person. Just,
See, I know you.
I get on the phone now.
You sound like you.
I have to call customer service from a refrigerator, and she goes, "Oh, I can take care of that. I can handle that too." So, one service.
You're the same lady that sounds like you smoke 3 packs of Pall Malls a day. Yeah, I know you.
You'll ask her how to change the setting on that calculator, and she'll just tell you whatever it is.
Yeah, that'd be too easy.
That calculator comes in handy because when I report my handicap for golf tournament, it just rounds it up, so I benefit. So, what's your handicap, sir? 10.
Hold on. 10. Yeah, there we go.
I thought it was 6.8, sir. No, it's 10.
Nope.
Look, here's the kid. Here it is, right here. 10.
Yep. What did we even start talking about?
I don't know. Our overtime segment usually goes off on tangents like this.
Welcome to the Cold Hard. Welcome to the Cold Hard Truth on Sports. There, this is what we get at 10.
After 10:30.
25.
Yeah. After 10:30,
TI graphic calculators.
Yeah, no, 11 o'clock. I'm telling you, 11 o'clock. It just goes off the rails sometimes. Like, we get into the most random rabbit holes.
Did you just put reference? I was talking about golf in the calculator. So we were on sports and have a golf guy. So we brought back to golf. Okay, so
I'll go with that.
Everything should go back to.
I don't remember if that was it, but I'll go with that. I'm fine.
I have
with
no
it.
idea.
We'll have to listen to the
It's
tape.
whatever it is.
Somebody call New York. Let's see the tape. Where are they at? I'll fire the producer. How about that?
It's whatever it is.
He should have known. He's fired. But one thing I wanted to bring up here, because we only got like 3 minutes left in the show. I was talking a little bit about at the top of the show. Doug Gottlieb did a segment today on boxing because the Canelo Triple G fight has officially been canceled, which I reported a couple days ago. It was going to be canceled, and now it did. Yay, I got it right. Now, he's looking for someone to fight because he still wants to fight on Cinco de Mayo. But the issue that they proposed is who's the heavyweight champion of the world. And not because they didn't finally find somebody within their building that knew it when they, broadcast the fights, but because at one point in time, being the heavyweight champion of the world meant something, and it doesn't seem to anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of one of my arguments with an issue with the longest reigning heavyweight champion of the world, which is the WBC champion, Deontay Wilder. He also really hasn't he really hasn't fought too many quality opponents, and my biggest thing is his marketing people have done nothing to help him out. I've went so far as to say I will do all of his marketing and PR for him for minimum wage, and I don't know if this stoked a fire under him, but over the last 8 months or so, they've done a pretty good job of promoting him. They got him on some reality show. He did Good Morning Football last week. He did Good Morning America. What else was he on? Something else. So his name is starting to get out there. People are starting to know who he is, kind of. But when you have people like Doug Gottlieb has the longest running drive time sports show in America, in the world, then in that case. Because really outside of America, there's not really a whole lot of sports talk shows. He didn't know who it was. Like, Klitschko's been retired for a year, and that was one of the guesses. So, I'm not gonna break down to it more. People can listen to.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
But you can listen to the show. You can listen to the show Sunday nights, the Boxing Source Radio Show, hosted by our boxing editor, James Bell, and he'll break down a little bit more what's going on. But the first American heavyweight champion in over a decade, Deontay Wilder, people don't know who he was. He's had the belt for I think 4 years now, 3 years. He's had, I think, 8 successful defenses of the title, and people still don't know who he is. And that's it's obviously a huge problem, but they've been doing better. So
big thumbs up to them doing better. But a fight in September between Wilder and Joshua will not be where it should be because neither has done enough to become names or recognized enough to people want to spend money to watch them fight. But that's all for the show this week. Appreciate you guys listening in. For those that listened on Blog Talk, they didn't get to hear the end of this show. It cuts off pretty abruptly. But that's a good reason why you should download the Spreaker app and go over to Spreaker.com and make sure you're following us over there as well. Hopefully here soon we will be on iHeartRadio. They want us to see at least 100 followers on Spreaker before they put us, before they allow us on iHeart. So at least make sure that we're getting to where we need to be on follows, so we can make sure that you can also find us on iHeart too. So that's all for the show tonight. I'm out.